humans in perspective tricks and car drawing tricks, foreshortening, and maybe a couple of other things. So let's see. The program I'm going to be using today is Sketchbook Pro. It's the same program I used from the first video. You can download it online. It's a pretty cool pretty cool program if you have a Cintiq. So, all right. So first things first, I wanted to go over human heads in perspective. So in my first video, let's have a little flashback here. In my first video, I was talking about how the basic structure of a human head, or a simple guideline to go off of, is start with a circle, and then you add in a jawline like this. You cut that up into that. Here's your base, your skull, basically. And then, so let's say this is your whole height of your head. The halfway point is roughly where your eyes are going to sit. And then halfway point of that is where your nose is going to sit. And then the halfway point between that is where your lips are going to go. So you can basically see where this all fits in if I just kind of flesh it out a little bit. All right, so I got a basic head shape here. That was in my first video. Now I got the back of the skull here. And note that the base of the skull here kind of hits right where your nose is going to hit. So that line wraps around. And this is knowing where things lie in relationship to each other is really important when you're trying to figure out the perspective of just about anything, including the human head. So we have the face here. Cool. We got a basic layer here. I'm going to use that for reference. So again, let's take that geometric shape. We've got the head, the base. Now, in the first video, I also was kind of harping against some of the drawing books that are out there, like how they try to make everything broken down into, they show you to draw things really broken down into geometric forms. So like, for instance, an arm, it's kind of like those wooden dolls you see in the art stores. They'll have like this, and then there's that weird like teardrop head, and they'll have like stick arms and cylinders, and then something like that. Now, this is, like I said, I feel like you get really stiff results from drawing stuff like this, and I try to go the route of basically keeping everything very organic in gesture drawings instead of drawing geometric. I drew this really quick, so actually from drawing this pretty quick, it came out pretty loose. But anyway, I just wanted to say that I don't think that there is no use for the geometric shapes. If I want to figure out how to place a human in a let's say a weird pose, or like a superhero pose, or like an odd perspective, I will go to these geometric shapes to basically figure out where things are, and then go over it in a more loose line fashion. So it basically set it up as a foundation. So for instance, here's that circle I just drew, and we're going to draw an under view of the head here. So we got this here, and I'm going to add on just that. The only thing that's knocking out the whole circle shape here is this jaw. So I'm going to draw on this jaw over here. So remember, we're looking under the human head here. So it's kind of like something like this, right? And I want to find, so we're gonna figure out where the eyes go here. So again, back to this part, you have your whole top, or your whole height here. You're gonna find that halfway point. Just guessing is cool for this. That's where the eye is. So I'm gonna go over here and kind of guess where that half point line is. And now, one thing to help me keep everything in place, or to check my placement, is creating parting lines and center lines. So like right here, I have, let's say I'm going to draw a round line. It kind of follows that form. That's going to be a parting line. So now notice here's the draw over here. It's in perspective. You know, it's going to be receding back in distance this way. So the center line is going to be up here, not so much down here. So that's roughly where my eyes are going to go. So I'm going to draw in a little eye mark, and then, you know, maybe the front of the brow. And then again, let's go back to our reference. We have this space here, and the halfway point is where the nose, roughly where the nose is going to be. So here's the nose. We're going to go over here, and I'm going to find the halfway point from here and here. So actually, it's from here. So here's the jawline. I'm going to figure out where the halfway point is, probably about right there. And then I'm going to draw on the nose. And it all depends, like, what kind of nose you designed up front. In this case, it's kind of a, more pointy nose. So, kind of try to mimic that. And then from the halfway point from here to here, I'm going to find my mouth. So that's where my mouth's going to go. So something kind of like that. Now, again, you're trying to keep on checking yourself where everything is in relation to each other. So again, the eye here, from what I mentioned in the first video, the top of the eye meets the top of the ear, the bottom of the nose meets the bottom of the ear. So let's try to match that with our parting lines. So your ear is roughly going to be right about there. Sweet. And your neck, then you're going to have your chin here. And this is where, like I said, I get really scribbly and start to add in stuff to make it seem a little more loose. So there's roughly a head in perspective. Now to check my work, what I like to do, like I mentioned before, is flip the canvas, image, mirror canvas. And if it looks right to me mirrored, it helps me pick out where things are a little bit shaky from seeing it from a different perspective. All right. So then, like I said, from there, I will basically go get my geometric shapes down and then go loosely over it and then tighten. So speaking of moving forward on human perspective, one thing that I've always, humans in perspective is one of the hardest things to draw. That and cars. I had a professor tell me, if you can draw a car, or if you can draw cars or people, you can draw anything, and I believe that. So, but let's try let's have a human interacting with an object from a different perspective. So, so here's my horizon line. I'm just going to draw on, like I was mentioning before. I'm just going to roughly grid out my perspective lines. They're not perfect. There is rough guidelines. I'm not worried. Especially in this right now, I'm not worried about getting perfect perspective lines. I'm going to fade that down because I just barely want to see it. Actually, tone it up a little bit. There we go. All right. So now I'm going to draw like a person, let's say, in a chair. So one thing I found to be really useful, even with coloring and adding objects into a scene, I try to think I think of the composition physically. So let's say you have a person and you want to add light to them. What I tend to do in my coloring and stuff, or in this case with drawing, the chair is going to be there first, and then I'm going to sit the person down in the chair. So that really helps me kind of, it's like I know that the constant is the chair, the person is the moving thing. This might be a little too big for our scenario, but let's adjust it. So I'm going to roughly draw on my, let's say it's just a box right now, real simple geometric chair. So we got that, and the legs, roughing it all in pretty quickly. And I want to put arms on the chair, let's say. So we have a chair sitting, and I want to put a person in it. So one thing I'm going to think about, well, what kind of pose do I want the person to be in the chair? Let's just do standard 2 arms on the handles and 2 feet on the ground. So one thing that helps me is you got to think of it in perspective. You got to think of the surfaces involved. So the butt is going to obviously sit in this area, and the feet, let's kind of elaborate where these perspective lines are on the floor. I'll place the footprints to help me determine where I'm going to put my feet. So we know that the feet are going to be on the floor something like this. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's kind of like footprint mat or something. So if I know that my feet are going to be sitting on this surface, I want to make sure that it just connects with the scene. So there we go. We have my footprints that I'm going to be using, and I know that my arms are going to be on the chair. So this is where I will kind of rough in the human form. So then I know that the feet are going to come up like they're going to pop out of the ground now. We're just going to like build the human up. So the knees, let's say the knees here. Let's put little perspective marks to make sure we're in check. You got to keep. I want to keep my knees level. So I'll make marks there just for the sake of maybe a little higher. So I want to like connect those points. And then draw back the legs. See, this is where that kind of geometric shaping comes in. I'm going a little rough with the geometric shaping, but it gives me some kind of guideline or a guide to go off of. And I'm using red right now because I want it to I'm going to tone it back. I don't want it to pop out more than the black, so I'm going to go over it in black. So here's my arms here. Staying pretty loose, you know, even though I am kind of using these geometric shapes to figure out where things are going to go. So there we go. I captured the human form pretty quickly. So there's that chair. I'll probably pop it out the back a little bit so you can see more of the chair. Here's shoulders. So then, like I said, I'll check my image by mirroring it. Maybe this chair is a little bit leany. Put back leg support a little bit like that. Now I'm happy with that right now, I think. Here's that geometric head shape. Cool. So there's those knees. Looks like they're following. Make sure they're following that perspective a little bit better. So now I have it. You got it. It's hard to. It's one of those things you just got to feel for. Make sure you give your human weight. You know, make sure you give the character weight so it looks like they're sitting on something. One way to help to give it weight is under shadows and stuff, heavier lines in the bottoms of things. So let's go into the darker lines, create a new layer. I'm gonna get a darker color. There we go with black. There we go. Okay. So then from there, you know, I'm still gonna keep it pretty rough right here. But I'm basically, this is where I still keep it loose because, like I said, I use geometric forms to figure out where things are going to go. I don't want it to be too stiff. Look like a mannequin. There we go. A little bit of a gut. Yep. All right. Here's the neck, jawline. Here's that shape I was talking about. Halfway point, find the eye. And here's the armchair arms. And then from this point, I would do my cleanup. Once I've